When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning to you. How are we all in internet land? I hope you're okay. I'm a little bit depressed, actually. It's the 22nd of June. So, yes, we all know what that means. It's going to start getting darker. We're on our way to winter. So make the most of the weather that you've got at the moment and enjoy the conversation that I'm going to be having with my guest, because my guest is a lady who has a story. And it's a career that can be split into two almost clearly defined halves. The first half was based firmly in the military, as over 23 years she was employed by the Air Force as a negotiator and contracts expert. The Air Force used her to negotiate contracts from $1 to over 100 million, both stateside and internationally. She was deployed to the Middle East after 9/11, has worked in the White House, and even holds a top secret security clearance, and has been a trusted agent of the US government for 30 years. But upon leaving the military, our guest didn't just consider the skills that she'd honed to be only useful in her past life, but has taken those very same skills and brought them into the corporate world. She now specializes in training people how to think like a negotiator by creating win-win results and understanding the pitfalls to avoid. Now, if that isn't enough, she's also an international award-winning speaker and an award-winning author of 2 books. Think Like a Negotiator, 50 Ways to Create Win-Win Results by Understanding the Pitfalls to Avoid. I think that's possibly the longest title ever. And Go Pink, Rules of Engagement, 5 Foundational Principles for Taking Control of the Handlebars of Your Life. No, that's even longer, that one. So let's bring onto the show to start joining up the dots of her life, the one and only, and a Harley Davidson rider, Eldonna Fernandez. How are you, Eldonna?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You are awesome sauce, as you was telling me before the show.
Exactly. Awesome sauce. That's my favorite word.
So where did the flavor of awesome sauce come about?
Yeah, I think a friend of mine said that somewhere, and I understand there's here in the U.S. there's a TV commercial that says that, but I've been saying that for years. Just instead of just saying awesome, you add a little extra sauce to it, so then it's awesome sauce.
Because I love the Americans because they use awesome a lot. Now, over in the United Kingdom, we don't use it at all, really. And it's kind of a word that's used for everything. And I sometimes think if you were actually in a position that we would go, that's amazing, that is awesome, like at the top of Everest, for example, looking down on the world, what would you use if you've used awesome for everything else?
Well, I don't really use awesome for everything unless it is awesome, but I guess maybe fantastic, spectacular, over the top, things like that.
You have had a life, though, that looking at it is slightly over the top. There's so many aspects to your life that when I was getting that introduction together, I was thinking, blimey, that's interesting, and that's interesting, and that's interesting. So is there any parts of your life that you look back on, and as we call on Join Up Dots, your big dot, that you think to yourself, yeah, that was when it started to move for me. That was the moment when my path possibly became realized?
That was probably, I call it my mirror experience, and that was about 9 years ago, only 9 years ago. It seems like, I've been around the planet for a while. It seems like maybe something might have happened a little sooner for me, but I had a pretty rough upbringing with alcoholic parents and poor choices in relationships and things like that. So I had a situation where I had been doing some work on myself, and I always say now that the power's in the work. You have to do work on yourself to really get where you want to go. And I remember looking in the mirror one day. I was just kind of a wreck, and looking in the mirror and realized the problem was looking back at me. And that's kind of the day when it really all changed for me, because I realized I had the control to do something about my life and change the circumstances and change my path and make a more positive, happy life for myself.
But that's a difficult thing to come up with, isn't it? So many people are in difficult situations. They have got parents that maybe are not the best parents, or they're in a situation that's not the best for you growing up. But to have that kind of realization that, yes, I can take responsibility, I think that's few and far between. Most people will actually savor the victim side of it instead of actually fighting back. What made you different?
Well, yeah, and what you're saying is true because the majority of people they don't want to see it, or they go through the victim mentality, and I think I did that for a long time, and I had just put I guess my hopes or whatever in bad relationships, and I had a significant relationship. I had been working on myself, like I said. Let me go back to growing up in alcoholism. If you know anything about alcoholism or any kind of addiction, that growing up in that kind of a situation, I had to basically numb my feelings to survive. My mother died of alcoholism when I was 12, and she was a raging alcoholic. And my parents threw stuff at each other. They threw each other across the room. There was always fighting, chaos, threats, all kinds of stuff. I was always getting threatened to be sent away. And I spent a lot of time in my childhood hiding under my bed while they were fighting and throwing things. But then I sort of recreated that chaos in my life because it was normal for me. And I had shut off my feelings and went through the majority of my life not really feeling anything, kind of numb, dead inside. And I had been doing work on myself and kind of done something to open up my feelings. And then a relationship that I was in, the guy left me for somebody else. He cut me out of the business we were in. It just was really devastating to me and my kids. And in my despair, I remember pulling myself up and just looking in the mirror. And it was just like it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my gosh, you're the problem. You've been making these bad choices all your life, and now you can do something about it. And I always say that was the best and the worst day of my life because I had about 6 months of crying that I did after that point. But knowing that I was the problem, I also realized I was the solution. So I started doing all kinds of different work to heal myself from all that pain.
It is a key point, and it comes up in conversation after conversation with successful folk that when they started to make that move to a better life, it was at their darkest point. Now, I can say the same. Now, my darkest point looking at your story was nothing, and I wouldn't even bring it up in conversation. But I remember being extremely unhappy at that time when I decided, right, it's now or never, I've got to take responsibility. And since that point, my life has never been better. And I look back on it and think, why the hell didn't I do this earlier? What was I thinking? But I wasn't ready at that time. But it's so interesting that you were mirroring your dodgy, relationship, your dodgy start, because you felt comfortable in that environment where the logical or people who are not in that situation, they would go, why? That makes no sense. If it's a distressing period, why try to replicate that?
Yeah, and a lot of people that have never been in those types of situations are like, well, why would you stay in something like that? Why would you do this to yourself? And the person in their right mind wouldn't do that. And exactly, but I wasn't in my right mind. I was paralyzed. I was traumatized from a lifetime of chronic trauma, abuse, and all types of things like that. So it was just, okay, this is just my life and there's no other way. I couldn't see a way out of it because of the state of mind that I was in. And it took a significant thing for me to actually kind of be just smacked in the face with it and realize, oh my gosh, really? And I think that's the hardest part. That's like you were saying, the thing that made me that much more distraught was the fact that I realized that I was the problem and the solution. But then, oh my gosh, I've lived my entire life like this. I could have done something about it. Are you kidding me? That was the tough pill to swallow.
You're now surrounded by the sort of movers and shakers, and that's one of the reasons why you're on the show, because one of the previous guests recommended you, and now you're sharing your story across the globe. And do you see those commonalities? Do you see, like I've been seeing with the people that you surround yourself with, that most of them needed something to really kick them up the butt to start going?
Yeah, I think so. I think the majority of people grow up in some sort of dysfunction, and we've all had something happen to us. Even if we had great parents, somebody's done us wrong. We've had something tragic happen or something bad, or we've been messed over by somebody. And it's just making that choice to do something else about it, do something different with your life. But one of the things I always say, which is in my Go Pink Rules of Engagement book, is surround yourself with people who hold you to a higher standard, not people who bring you down. And it's those people that you surround yourself with that'll help you elevate on your path. So I found that I was hanging around people that were all about drama and things like that. And when I started to make a change in my own life, those people started to fall off. And then I no longer, not only did I no longer attract those kind of people, I didn't want to be around them.
Yeah, it's weird. You do have to sack your peer group, don't you, if they are the kind of guys. And it's really strange because there's a classic phrase that we all know about Jim Rohn, that you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. But a lot of people have problems where it's the people that love them most that are the ones that are anchoring them to the position that they are. They almost don't want them to try to better themselves and go for a dream life for fear of failure and feeling bad about themselves. Was there anybody that, when you look back on it, really cared for you and you knew that they cared for you, but were one of those type of people that was sort of anchoring you?
Well, I've had people like that in my life where you start to elevate and they're like, oh no, I'm down here and you need to stay down here with me, because if you start rising and you start looking at yourself and doing something different with yourself, that means that I have to do it too. And they'll pull you back down with them because they don't want to look at themselves. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. They don't want you to rise for them, but then also they might lose you as well because they are not going to rise with you. So it was tough at first because I had some friends kind of fall off, and I didn't understand it until I kind of looked back and said, oh, I get why this happened now. They just couldn't go with me. And it was painful because there were people that I was close to, and I'd had to just kind of resolve myself that was part of the process, and I always think you need to, have coaches and mentors that you work with. I surround myself with people that are smarter than me so I can get smarter.
Yeah, that's the other key thing as well, isn't it? I'm doing daily conversations and you cannot help but just learn. You become a sponge with these nuggets of gold that people throw at you. And if you do have that opportunity of surrounding yourself, I had a boss years ago that always used to try to hire under him so that he was the brightest person in the room. And I never understood that. And then a boss came in who was over him and basically kind of sacked him, really, and said to him, this is stupid. What you need to do is hire the brightest people in the room and be the most stupid person in that room as well. If you can't do that, then you're not right to manage this company.
Yeah, that's definitely a way to success. You don't want to have, I'm going to keep myself smart by being the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest person in your group of friends, you need to get more friends, because you need to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you, more successful than you, so you can find out how they did it and learn from them and elevate yourself. It's a continual, never-ending process if you want to be successful.
Okay, this is a question I'm only going to ask for the listener, because I know a lot of the listeners out there are on their start to their life, their dream life. They're about to take that leap of faith. They're about to take responsibility. So if you're surrounding yourself with really bright people, how do you not feel inferior to them? How do you not close down because they're saying things that maybe you don't quite grasp, or they're having conversations that are slightly around the curve to where you are at the moment?
We have to understand that getting feedback and lifelong learning, just expanding your knowledge, is a never-ending process. And I can understand that, because I felt like, oh gosh, I don't know anything. These people are going to think I'm just a blinking idiot. And it just didn't. I had to resolve within myself, no, how am I going to get smarter if I don't surround myself with these people, and just be okay with it. Be okay with the fact that, okay, these people are smarter than me. I want to get to where they are. So the only way to do that is to surround myself with them and to ask questions. And, so what if a question you ask seems stupid? Now, as I've elevated it throughout my business, I look at the people that are coming up where I was and remember I was where they were, and they just want to get to where I am. And it's my job now as somebody more successful to hand the mantle off to them. So it's kind of an each one reach one thing. I'm reaching out to people smarter than me, but then I'm reaching back to those who are not quite where I am and helping them. So if you look at it that way, it kind of puts it in a different perspective.
Do you have a nurturing personality?
I think I do. Well, I'm a mother, so I have somewhat of a nurturing personality. But then being a military person, sometimes I have, I guess, I'm very direct. So oftentimes when I'm coaching with people, I have to remember that, especially women, that my personality might come off a little bit strong. So I have to adapt. So as long as I keep that in mind, I can get into that nurturing mode. But I don't automatically go there because I was in the military 23 years, and it's just kind of like, okay, let's get the mission done. What do you mean? Come on, let's go. I have to temper myself at times.
So if we jump back and start joining up the dots, and you looked in that mirror and you decided you're going to take responsibility, was it straight into the military, or was there other things you did before you went in there?
Well, this was after the military that mirror experience happened for me. The military actually saved me professionally. Because, like I said, my parents were alcoholics. My mother died when I was 12. My father basically shut off and died emotionally, didn't really say two words to me for all while I was growing up. I dropped out of high school. I was running with the bad crowd. I was heading down a loser's path. And one day I saw this commercial that said, Air Force, a great way of life. And to me, it was kind of like, oh, that sounds like an adventure. Let's go for that. So I went and got my high school equivalency, and I enlisted in the Air Force. And that saved me professionally because I was able to get my college degree while I was on active duty. And I was trained in a great job. And so that kind of turned my life around professionally. It was the personal side that took a lot of years to straighten out.
And what year was this when you went into the military?
1980.
Oh, right, okay. So it was a long time before sort of Top Gun and all those kind of things come out. And I know there was a big boom with people wanting to go in to sort of feel the need for speed and all that business.
Oh, no, it was long before that. And actually, when I joined the military was only about 8% women at the time. So I was kind of taking a step out there. I mean, to me, I just never really thought about that, I guess, because I grew up a lot of years with my dad. So, being a male-dominated environment, I had no issue with that. But it was a step out there before anybody else, I guess, really did, before movies and that kind of glamorized the military.
So what did being in the military give you? Obviously, the education side of things, you've covered that already. But personally, did it just give you structure from a life that sounds like it really wasn't in control?
Definitely. That's exactly what it gave me. You hit that right on the head. It did give me structure. I didn't have any structure in my life growing up, and that the Air Force gave me just enough structure to kind of ease the chaos part of my life. And so I was working within a structured environment. I had a clear path to success. I knew what I needed to do to get promoted. I knew what I needed to do to get my job done. And I excelled at everything I did in the military. I got a lot of awards and decorations, a lot of recognition, but I had a good time too. I mean, there were some rough things that happened with, unfortunately, sexual harassment and sexual assault, but that's a small percentage of my Air Force career, and I've done the work to get beyond the effects of that and all the other trauma from my life. But when I look back on my military career, I got to travel, I got to meet great people. I actually was given a high level of responsibility early on. I was negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. In the mid-'80s, I went into Houston, Texas and Beaumont, Texas with a briefcase and a couple of guys, and we bought up hundreds of thousands of dollars in the city and set it on a ship going to Honduras. I mean, I did it with a handshake and a briefcase. That was exciting stuff.
Did you really think at the time, wow, this is exciting? Because, some of the stuff that in your past is a kind of almost James Bond, isn't it? Top secret security clearance and working in the White House and a trusted agent of the US government for 30 years. When you're in that, is it not glamorous at all? Because it kind of sounds like it's glamorous.
I never really thought of it as glamorous, I guess. It was just kind of my job. And I didn't even realize that we always hear over here about, oh, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to this country. And I never really thought of my life as being in service. I was in the military. My job was a contract specialist. I would go out and handle contracts. If they deployed me somewhere, I would go in and just buy up the town. It was just what I did. It didn't seem like a glamorous thing. And then, nowadays with all the people who, flew something or were hurt in combat or whatever, my job in the military doesn't seem to be like glamorous at all. But looking back on it, I mean, I did a lot of things and had a lot of experiences that most people don't have. I got to meet so many different people. I was stationed in the UK for 4 years, loved it over there, got to see most of Europe from the seat of my Harley thanks to being sent over there by the military. It was great.
So what kind of people have you met? I assume you sort of met presidents and people, have you?
Maybe a few, but mostly who I dealt with was, like, I was deployed to Qatar, which Qatar is really in the news right now with the thing that soldier that was returned from Afghanistan. I guess the negotiation was done in Qatar, and that was where I was stationed. And I dealt with some sheiks when I was there, and I dealt with a lot of different people because it was me and a guy with a bag of cash, and we go into town with my little pad of purchase orders, buy the town up, throw the stuff in our Suburban or have it delivered to the base, and head back. And we did that every day. And it was just the different people I met from so many different countries and cultures. I've been to Spain, to Tunisia, to Germany, and obviously stationed in the UK and some other places. And it was just exciting to meet all the different people from different cultures. Stupid question on one hand, but relevant in the other. When you travel the world, obviously the cultures are different, but are the people within those cultures radically different? I don't think so. I think although we all live in a different part of the country. I mean, when I lived in the UK, I barely stayed on the base. I connected with a lot of people in the community and made great friends that I still have today. And just got to know, okay, your culture's a little different, but really everybody has, I think, the same need to connect and the same need to be successful and the same desires to live a good, happy life and take care of their families. I think that's the same no matter where you live or where you're from.
Which is the answer I was expecting. And so my question back to you is, yes, people want to be successful. They want to connect. Why don't they do it? It's quite evident in these conversations that I'm having that the majority of people out there don't, and they kind of live in this limbo land where they're never really reacting to anything other than when it's forced on them, i.e. they lose their job or something occurs that they actually have to take action. Why do you think, if everyone has those desires, so few of them actually do anything about it?
A couple of reasons. Probably one is fear. Fear stops people from doing a lot of things. Fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of not doing well, fear of embarrassment, whatever fears come forward. And it's the person that just goes for it anyway, no matter if they're fearful or not, that's successful. I always say people want to have a light switch and flip a light switch to become an expert at something or become good at something. I've been a speaker for a lot of years and I'm still doing work to improve, but I used to be petrified to speak in front of people. And the only way I could get over that was actually to get up and speak in front of people. And too many people don't want to do that. They just want it to be handed to them and they don't want to do the work. And unfortunately, if you don't, you're going to stay on the other side, just kind of waiting and looking. And you don't want to go through your entire life and look back and say, wow, I wish I would have done that. Or I wish I wouldn't have done what somebody else expected me to do and did what I really wanted to do. And then there's another side of that. Emotionally connected people perform better. And we're so connected in this internet world that we don't connect emotionally anymore. People don't take time to build relationships and get face to face with people. And I've made a real promise to myself to, when I meet people, I set up meetings and do face to face coffees just to get to know people and build relationships. You're more emotionally connected than staying behind your computer and looking on Facebook or whatever social media is out there. you need to get out and actually connect with people. And I think connected people are more successful.
No, I agree with that totally. But I've actually found it amazingly emotional to have these conversations. And after an hour of quite deep discussion, I feel like I know you already, Eldonna. I feel like I could come over to California and actually sort of go out for a few drinks and a meal or whatever and just carry on this conversation with no issues at all. So you can engage, can't you? But I do take your point totally with like texting and Facebook and all these kind of snaps of a few words that we throw out all the time. It's very difficult to build up what hopefully we're experiencing now, where we're actually getting to know what that person is like at the other end of the line.
Well, yeah, we're having a conversation versus somebody sending a text or an email. I'm actually having a conversation with you. So I'm making a connection with you, getting to know you through this conversation. And that's what people are lacking. We do the text or we do the email or we do the Facebook or whatever. That's not, while that's maybe reaching out, making a slight connection, you need to have the conversation, whether that's where Skype is great. You know, we're on Skype right now and we're able to connect that way. And people can even do it with, I've spoken to people in the UK, I've spoken to people in Australia, all over the world with Skype and a video camera. And that's a great way to build a relationship too. But it's just having that conversation with someone instead of just kind of a simple stay disconnected and I'm going to hide out kind of thing and then wonder why you're miserable.
Until I started doing this job, and I'd never been on Skype at all. And if you listen back to the first episodes, I was pretty much saying all the time, wow, this is amazing. You're there and I'm here and we're talking over the computer. And it really did kind of blow my mind that you could just click through on Skype and bang, for the price of like your internet connection. And even though we've recorded like 100 episodes now, I still think this is beyond what anyone could have dreamt of 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I have friends all over the world that I talk to, and that's great. So, you know, I've built a relationship, like you're saying. If you came to California, we could meet for a coffee, and it's kind of like, well, we've already got a relationship because we've made a connection. And I think that that's what we're lacking in the world today because we're so busy. People are it's the microwave societies. We're running around doing way too much stuff, and we don't take the time to connect. And if we make commitments to ourselves to start reconnecting with people, I think people will be happier.
If you step back to the military, the thing that struck me when you were saying it is that you were extremely successful and you won many awards for excellence. Why? Why did, and I don't mean that rudely in any shape or form, but why? Was it just that your personality responded to the military, or was that the way that your brain operated?
Well, I think probably I responded to the military because I had no structure, and that structure just felt so much of a relief to me. Like, oh my gosh, I finally have structure in my life. There's no chaos in my work environment. I know what's expected of me, and I was able to just operate so over the top with that because it just made me feel like I was, I guess, whole in a way in that kind of regards because I never had that. I never knew what I was going to get or walk into when I came home. Were my parents going to be drunk? Were they going to be fighting? Was the house going to be sold out from under us? What was going to happen? And when I turned 18, I came home one day. My father had moved from Texas to Florida and didn't leave me a forwarding address. There was a note of eviction on the door. The house was empty. So those kind of things, okay, that happened. And other things like that happened in my life. The military gave me the foundation to feel at ease where I could operate. And it just really worked well for me.
Could you understand why your dad did that?
I don't know. I think he was, one of his friends said, oh, you need tough love kind of thing. So he just kind of disappeared. And I guess in a way it was a good thing that he did that because it spurred me, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to go live over here. I found myself a place to live. I had a job. And eventually I joined the military. It was kind of like, all right, I guess I'll do this now kind of thing. So I'm not real sure what his primary reason was, but I think in a way it helped me.
I find it unbelievable. I'm a father of 5, and if I can't put my daughter to bed and my son to bed sort of every night, it tears me up. I couldn't imagine wanting to do that, and I couldn't imagine how a father thinks that way.
Well, I couldn't imagine either, but both of my parents were sick from that alcohol. I mean, they'd been drinkers all their lives, and that distorts your thinking in a way. I mean, my mother, I don't even, as an adult, because she died when I was 12, I don't even know her in an adult mind and know what she was like as somebody who wasn't an alcoholic. So I can only wonder what kind of potential could she have achieved in her life had she not been a raging alcoholic. I mean, she was sick out of her mind as far back as I can remember, always screaming and yelling at me and always threatening to send me away and telling me how no good I was. So by the time I entered the military, I had such low self-esteem that it took a lot of years for me to overcome those voices that she constantly fed into my head when I was growing up.
It is fascinating that, so, we touched on this earlier, that so many people have dark moments. I called it the big dot in their life. When we join up dots, there's a big dot that really sort of moves you on. And most of the time, that dot is black. When you're in there, it's darkness, and you can't wait to get out of it. But when you do, and you do take control of your life, and you move on to something better, you look back on it, and you actually go, no, it was dark, but that was actually a good thing. I can now see that without that occurring, I wouldn't have got to where I am now. And certainly from my connection with you and from what I've read about you on the web, and this is only from my humble opinion, but it seems to me that your life now is firmly in the success mode due to your beginnings and your realization that structure was key. And I think that's really one of the reasons why you went into the military. I think you were looking for something which was polar opposite to what you already had and you experienced.
Most definitely. And it's like I just stumbled across it. And I actually stumbled into the contracting career field as well. I went in what was called open administrative, meaning I would choose my job when I got to basic training. And I wanted to do something with computers. And back then, computers was considered an administrative career field. They had computer programming as one of the jobs. And that sounded interesting to me. Well, little did I know, my recruiter didn't tell me that I was probably going to end up not seeing that job on the list. And I looked at this list of jobs, and the top job with the highest score was contract specialist. I didn't know what it was. I just looked at the score and figured, well, you must need to be smarter to do this job than these other jobs, so I'll pick this one. Didn't even know what it was. And here I am, so many years later, teaching people about contracts negotiation. So it was a great path for me. And it really, it did provide the structure and the foundation I needed in order to set the framework of my life.
Right, I think that's the perfect time, actually, to bring on a Steve Jobs with his words. We do this generally on every show, and this is a speech that he did in 2005, and I think it really does have relevance to your life up to that point. We'll listen to the speech, we'll have a quick chat about it, but then I'm very keen to actually move on to your life now and how the elements from the military and your contract negotiating has been brought into corporate land. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
What do you reckon about those words?
Truth, total truth. Because I look back at the dots of my life and, wow, just think if I hadn't have gone here, if I hadn't have made this choice, if I hadn't have done this, I would not be where I am today. And it's kind of like you want to know where the next dot is, but every time I look back, it's like, oh, well, that connected there, that connected me there, that connected me there. It's all followed a well-worn path.
If you kind of knew the path that you were going to end up on now, hypothetically, but if you could jump back, do you think you would have done exactly the same things? Are you your unique self at the moment? Is all the aspects of your character and your history come together in the perfect package?
I think so. I wouldn't wouldn't change a thing. It was tragic. It was awful. A lot of it. It was painful. I say a lifetime of chronic trauma because it seemed like I had to learn the lessons again and again and again. But now what I do in a lot of my speaking, I do teach people a lot about negotiation, but oftentimes I do some motivational talks and share about what the things I've gone through, and people will be, oh, well, you don't understand. Then I share my story and they're like, okay, I don't see that in you. See, I've got peace today and I'm grateful for that peace. So I have the peace, but I also have the story, and I can show people you can get to this spot too. So I'm an example for others that are maybe in pain or in the middle of something, that if they continue to do the work and keep aiming and keep shooting for the moon kind of thing, that they can end up just with a peaceful life as well.
So how do you do this? You've created your own company, and do you canvas corporations to work with you, or have you got enough profile now that they just come to you?
Well, I'm working with corporate and entrepreneurs. I do a lot of speaking at events. I speak at just about any event, like associations bring me in to speak, or big events bring me in to do a keynote talk, or sometimes I'll do a workshop on negotiation. My primary thing is think like a negotiator, and I do my own training a couple times a year, and I have corporate that I'm connecting with and having them send people to my trainings. And I also work with entrepreneurs as well. So it's a pretty good mix of people that I connect with to help them in negotiation skills, being better negotiators personally and professionally, every area of their life.
So this would be management. This would be in relationships as well, would it?
Definitely. Management, mid-level managers, employees, entrepreneurs, business owners, people like that. I do a really cool training a couple times a year that's experiential in nature, so you learn negotiation through fun games and themes. And also we talk about the inner game as well, because I don't believe anybody can be a good negotiator unless they have confidence, and confidence comes from the inner game where like I mentioned before, doing all the work on myself to get my inner game in order and being strong and confident in who I am.
It is the key thing, isn't it? Confidence is something that you don't get overnight, but by incremental gains, you suddenly look back and you join up the dots again, and you think, wow, yeah, I can feel it coming out of me now, which 6 months ago just wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, I look at myself, say, speaking in front of an audience of 1,000 people. When I first started speaking, I was shaking in my shoes and thought if somebody would have told me, oh, you're going to speak in front of thousands, I would have been like, you need to go to the hospital because you're obviously delusional, because that will not happen because I'm petrified to speak in front of people. But through doing the work and working with coaches and mentors and actually one of the tips in my Think Like a Negotiator book talks about drilling my skills, continuous improvement, and continuously doing things to get better, I'm confident to speak in front of however many people want to bring me in to speak.
Can you remember your first crowd when you first stood up?
Oh, gosh. Yes. Well, actually, the first time that I had to speak in front of a group, I was in the military, and my supervisor had assigned each person within the unit a training topic. And so we had training every week, and my turn came and I had to do training. And it was back in the day when there was overhead transparencies, tells you how long ago that was, instead of a PowerPoint.
I remember those days.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I had my little training there. The lights were out, which was good because you had to see the overhead. But I was sweating, and I was red in the face, and I was shaking, and I was stuttering, and it was almost worse than death. And public speaking for most people in the first place is the biggest fear, even more than death. And people would rather be in the box and give the eulogy, as Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, says. But that was awful. It was awful, horrible. I managed to get through it somehow. I felt sick to my stomach. I ran to the bathroom afterwards. It was awful. But I was in the military. You can't tell somebody, no, I'm not going to give this briefing. So I had to keep giving briefings, and I eventually got comfortable with giving the briefings to the point when I went to a we would go to military leadership school, and I was given the honor graduate award and had to give an impromptu speech in front of hundreds of people, and I was able to do it. So, but then when I started professional speaking, that was a whole different thing because you have to really craft your story and that. But I didn't get over it by just sitting there hoping something would happen. I actually had to do the work and actually get up and speak to get over being afraid of speaking.
It's funny because in my life, I've been a financial trainer. So for the last 30 years or so, no, 30 years, about 25 years, I have been used to getting up in front of people. And it was just like breathing. You know, I didn't care what size of the crowd. I would just get up and do the thing. And now I've been doing this. I've kind of, my brain has somehow switched. And I'm so used to being behind the mic and channeling different energies than you do when you're actually public speaking, that when I started this series of shows, I was saying, yeah, I love public speaking. Get me back up there. That's where I live and breathe. And now I'm kind of thinking, oh, I'm not too sure now. I don't know if I can do it like I used to. It's funny how it drifts away from you.
Yeah, I guess that happens. But I'm sure if you got back into it, you'd be great again. But, you know, it's just a matter of, I think it's like the falling off the bicycle thing. You never lose it, really. I haven't ridden my Harley in a couple of months, and I'm sure when I hop on it today, because it's coming back from the shop, when I hop on it today, it'll be just like a couple of months ago when I was out on it. So I'll be riding like there was nothing. It just kind of kicks back in. That's in your DNA already. It's in your cells, and you can just call on it anytime you want once you have mastered it.
Yeah, I'm not a biker in any shape or form, but people have told me that the Harleys, although they're iconic, are terrible to ride. Is that true?
I don't think so. I've been riding Harleys for 18 years, and I actually saw most of Europe from the seat of my Harley, and had a great time doing it. I've got a '98 Softail Custom, and while I'd rather have a touring bike now that with a rubber-mounted engine. That engine isn't rubber-mounted, and that just makes the ride a little bit smoother. I've enjoyed all the rides I've done. I've ridden thousands of miles.
I can't imagine you looking at the picture that I'm looking at the moment on the back of a motorbike. But then I saw a picture of you with your biker mates all standing together. And wow, the difference between the two of you. It was, this is the image I'm looking at is uber professional, glamorous person. But then you can grunge it up with the bikers, can't you?
I can, and that's a great thing. You can take on different personas, I guess. I do that in my training. I have different personas that I teach from, the different themed games. But there are people that see me out speaking, and I'm all professional in my dress or whatever, and I'm, not a huge person. I'm kind of petite in size, and they're like, you ride a Harley and you ride a big Harley? Can't see that. But then let me put on my chaps and my pink helmet, and oh, okay, I get that. It's just you put on a different kind of mentality when you're doing. It's just like thinking like a speaker, or thinking like an interviewee right now, or thinking like a negotiator, thinking like a biker. You just can go into those modes whenever you need to.
Once again, just talking off the top of my head, but it feels to me that the Harley is actually the other side of the military. The military gave you structure from your life beforehand, and the Harley gives you a freedom away from the structure. Would that be true?
That is true. Harley definitely gives me freedom. I started riding Harleys in 1996, about 3 months before I was stationed in the UK, where, you guys are on the other side of the road over there. That was interesting to learn how to navigate a motorcycle after only riding for a couple of months, and then okay, we're on the other side of the road, we have roundabouts and all this other strange stuff, and then you go over to go over to Europe, and it's back to the side of the road you're used to. But it's just the feeling of freedom, the things that I've seen on my bike, the places that I've been. I did a ride on dirt bikes through Alaska and the Yukon up to the Arctic Circle and back with a group of people, and just the freedom from that just helps you, I guess, have some freedom and fun in your life, and where it's not all structure. I think all structure and no fun makes somebody a dull person, and I'm certainly not dull.
It's funny you say the word roundabout, because I remember I've driven literally all of America, and I've only ever seen one roundabout. And we were so surprised by this roundabout. It stuck with us in our mind because you just have like large bending roads, don't you? It's not like the United Kingdom where we crisscrossing all over the place.
Right. I've been in a couple of roundabouts in the U.S. U.S. is a big place, but we don't have roundabouts. It's just roads that kind of go for days and go through towns, and we have a lot of traffic lights, but yeah, freeways, as you call them, motorways over there. So there's no roundabouts. It's you get off at an exit, and there's traffic lights, but it's a little different. So it took a minute to get used to.
The roundabout of your life, if we had gone all the way around it full circle and you are where you are, what is your key strengths now? So for the listeners listening in, and they've heard how you've developed and how you've taken control, but now you are firmly in corporate land, what are the key strengths that differentiates you between other people in your field?
Well, I wake up each day with an attitude of gratitude. I have faith. I say prayers. I'm thankful for that I get another day, that everything works, that I can walk and talk and move, that I have a roof over my head. I always get myself back to the gratitude and the things that I'm thankful for. And I make sure that I listen to positive, uplifting things like on TV or the radio, if I listen to any of that, or on the internet or whatever. I very rarely listen to the negative stuff, positive, uplifting music. So I surround myself with things that keep me in a mindset of positivity, uplifting, keep myself peaceful. And I do things to help people and give back and stop thinking about myself. When I take myself out of the equation and remember that it's not all about me, that kind of keeps me focused on a path and keeps me peaceful and happy.
Because the thing that's struck me through all these conversations, that my mindset at the beginning, that successful people got there by basically grabbing what they could and making the most of it, is so wrong. It's totally evident to me now that people have got successful by giving back as much as they possibly can.
That's true, but also your mindset's your greatest asset. We're surrounded by so much negativity in the world that sometimes it's hard to, when you wake up and it's like, oh gosh, here we go again, another day, whatever. So you got to flip that mindset. And I had to do a lot to stop that negative talk, and sometimes it still comes back because the imprint period of your life is from 0 to 7 years old, and what you're imprinted with, that carries on with you through your life. And then after that is the socialization period, where the people around you are the examples that you get. Well, I was imprinted with, I was a loser, I was no good, I was going to get sent away. I mean, that's what I was imprinted with by my mother, and my father didn't do anything to make her stop. So that's what I went through life with, and I had to combat that. And sometimes I still get those voices that want to come back, but I have tools to use. I have things I read, affirmations, I call people, I call my friends, or I call a coach. I do something to get my mind off that track because it's easy to go down that rabbit hole. And then I got to remember it's not about me, and I need to give back to somebody else. And that's what I'm here to do, is to show people that I went through all this mess, but look at me now. I have peace. I have a smile on my face that comes from my heart, and you can have that too.
Did you honestly sort of wake up sometimes and go, wow, how did this happen? Or do you just really mentally join up the dots and go, yeah, I know exactly how this happened and I deserve everything I'm getting?
Well, sometimes I wake up with the wow, really? I don't realize how horrendous my childhood and past things that I've gone through was at times, because I lived it. It just seemed like, okay, this is my life, whatever. But sometimes when I'm speaking and somebody reflects it back to me and they say, wow, you're still standing after a story like that, I can't even believe it. And it reminds me of, geez, I have been through a lot. I get glimpses of that, but then I look back and I say, okay, well, had I not gone through all of this, I would not be where I am right now doing what I'm doing. So this is part of my path. But so I do get glimpses of that at times.
Well, let's take you back in time now, because this is the very end of the show. This is what we call a sermon on the mic, and this is when I send you back like a time traveller to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you did go into the room and spot a young Eldonna sitting there, would you go up to her and give advice, or would you just sort of walk out? So I'm going to be interested to see what you would say to her if you had the chance. This is the mic, the sermon on the mic, and when the music fades out, you're in conversation.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the sermon on the mic. The sermon on the mic.
Hey, Eldonna, this is your older Eldonna. Just stopping by. I see you're going through life right now. And I'm not going to tell you to do anything different, because if you did anything different, your life wouldn't be where it's going to go. And you have a lot of people to help. You have a big purpose to fulfill. You have a big mission on this planet. But I would say, while you're going through this part of your life, enjoy some of it and take it all in. Don't wish it away, and reflect on what you do each and every day. Have a good life, and I'll see you later.
And I think she has had a good life. Maybe not the beginning bit, but the rest of it's been good.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't change a thing.
And we wouldn't change a thing about you either. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots, Eldonna. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because that's the beauty of this show. Our histories keep on growing, so there's always successes, there's always failures to discuss, because I believe the only way to build our future is actually by connecting our past. Eldonna, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great being here.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.